What I'm going to do today is to rejoin the idea of neo-villainy that was published in a paper in 2017. And what myself and my colleagues did in that was to identify this distinctive mode of production. What we weren't able to do and what we are able to do in more detail now is to look at the impact of this, and we refer to this as corrosive self-employment. And so just to connect with the idea, there are 4 characteristics of the work of the self-employed personal trainer in the fitness industry. And these are that they must pay a rent in order to operate, to access the gym, its equipment and its members. They are bonded to the fitness center or gym, because without this, they don't get access to clients. They have no guaranteed wage. Sorry, I missed that first one. No guaranteed wage, so they don't earn anything unless they are able to solicit clients. And then finally, they engage in work for labour, which is a component of the Marxian surplus labour. And the 2 parts of these that become very important for this discussion is the rent and the work for labour. Okay, so if we refer to Burrowi's ideas on the difference between feudalism and capitalism, there is a very clear distinction between the necessary and surplus labour of feudalism. Okay, the serf had to engage in a certain amount of surplus labour for the lord, had to pay a rent before they undertook the necessary labour in order to survive. And this distinction is very clear in the work of the archetypal neo-villain, which is the self-employed personal trainer. So they have to pay the rent. They also have to do work for the gym. Now, this has qualitative and quantitative impacts. So qualitative impacting on the quality of work, quantitative impacting on the number of jobs. And this happens both within the job itself and in proximate related employment. So I'm not going to go into any detail here. This is the purpose of the paper, is for us to explore this. And then the idea is that neo-villainy it can be applied elsewhere. We've applied it elsewhere, and it's certainly apparent in the gig economy. So these impacts can be seen beyond just the fitness industry. I'm not going to talk in any detail. I'm going to try and keep this to just over 10 minutes. The study there was conducted in 2018, so this is before the pandemic. And if we want to identify an industry that has been hit especially severely by the pandemic, then the leisure and fitness industry would be one. And I know there are others, but this has been severely impacted. Now, this data comes from 2018, so sometime before the pandemic. And if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to go through this. Okay, so in terms of how this impact happens, because of the surplus in rent and in kind, this has a direct impact beyond the job on the work of others. It has an impact not only on personal trainers who are employed by gyms, it also impacts on other leisure assistants that undertake work for gyms. So the nature of the work poses this impact, and we talk about corrosion, and this refers to Sennett's ideas on the corrosion of character and the impact of insecurity and flexibility on the nature of work. I'm not going to talk in any detail here, but just to direct you to the graph, what you see in each of these discrete data points, on the left column, the orange column, you see what the self-employed trainer is doing. In the right, or the blue column, you see what employed personal trainers do. Now, the orange column refers to the percentage of personal trainers who aren't paid to do this work, but undertake this work as a form of surplus labour. So in sum, the self-employed personal trainers perform tasks that otherwise employees would be undertaking. So there's a very clear impact in terms of what they do on employed work. So what do we see? We took data from 2012 to 2018. There is a huge increase in the percentage of members of gyms in this period. And what we don't see is anywhere near the increase in employment. And I should also point out that we are using proxy measures, which aren't particularly effective. So these data actually belie the impact. So certainly what we're seeing is a decrease in employment, despite, or certainly not employment that is keeping time with the increase in demand. If we think about the within group impact of neo-villainy, the work of self-employed personal trainers, back in medieval times, the Lord's land would constrain the number of serfs working that land, the fertility of the land. It's exactly the same. The parallel transfers very neatly because the nature of the gym will dictate how many personal trainers work there, and it's in the interest of the gym because of surplus labour, the rent, and the rent in kind, the work. It's in the gym's interest to have as many of these self-employed personal trainers there as possible. It's an ancillary income. It's also surplus labour. But how many SEPs operate there, self-employed personal trainers operate there, will be determined by the quality of the equipment, the number of members, and the affluence. Importantly, the affluence of members. Now, there is a socio-economic dimension to this. If personal trainers are operating in affluent environments, large cities where there is, a concentration of wealth, then they're more likely to do well, because this function costs members additional income. And so the fertility is of the gym, the number of members, the affluence of members, and the equipment is important. And so there is a benefit to maximising the numbers of these people, and this leads to this quantitative intra-occupational corrosiveness, by which we mean the nature of self-employed work has a direct and serious impact on the numbers employed to do this job. And I think this graph shows quite clearly the impact in terms of the decrease in employment of personal trainers and the dramatic increase in self-employment of personal trainers. So what you can see is over the 6-year period, the number of personal trainers employed to do the job has dropped, whereas the number of self-employed personal trainers has just exploded. There's no other term for it. So we can see this very, this intra-group impact is clearly there. In terms of the qualitative, so the impact of the quality of the work, of this work, the best way to think about this is the nature of the service provided. The service provided by personal trainers, self-employed personal trainers, is not essential. In the initial paper, we talked about the difference between the personal trainer and a self-employed hairdresser or barber. And the way to think about this is, if anyone goes to a gym, they can very easily exercise. Okay, you move around. If you just go to the gym and move around, that's exercise. You know inherently how to do this. Whereas it's very different if somebody goes to a hairdresser's, they don't sit in the seat and style their own hair. It's a very different option available. And this does increase the cost dramatically. And I quite like Jim Gaffigan's line on this, that comparison of personal training to a pyramid scheme. It's ludicrous that people would pay to be in an environment and then pay more in order to access this service. It's unlikely that that clients will solicit the service of more than one self-employed personal trainer, and the cost is a huge disincentive in order to solicit this service. And what this leads to is a very dramatic kind of intra-occupational impact. Now, I'm aware I've just gone over 10 minutes. I'm not going to talk in any detail about these things, but what we see in terms of the nature of the work is that it increases presenteeism. So these people work very long hours. They spend a long time. And remember, they're not being paid necessarily for this. They only get paid if they attract payment by a client. There's a huge impact on physical health, because these people are a very good example of the aesthetic labourer. They embody their knowledge. They have to keep fit themselves in order to attract clients. They are the archetype of the walking billboard. And so it has an impact on their physical health, and it also impacts on their mental health. And this was a large component of the survey that we conducted with personal trainers. And so I'll just finish here, and hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions. We've documented this corrosive impact, the fact that the nature of this work impacts detrimentally on people working in proximate jobs. It also has an impact on the people undertaking, the self-employed personal trainers. The nature of the work is problematic. The implications to the fitness industry are clear. What the pandemic has shown is that basically being in the gym is potentially quite dangerous because of the aerosol, because of the breathing and the sweat. What a place to transmit illness, and people have withdrawn from this, and there is a possibility that gyms will struggle to recover after the pandemic, and therefore things are going to get worse. Now, what is more important, that last point, and I'll finish, is the fact that I, with colleagues, have documented neo-villainy, not just in the fitness industry, but we see it in the gig economy, urban logistics. So the work of kind of delivery drivers are very similar. They map onto these characteristics of neo-villainy. And we've also seen it, and this is really worrying, in traditionally high-skilled and career jobs. So, for example, airline pilots in several, particularly one major European airline, we can talk about this. We can talk about this neo-villainy taking hold in this industry too. And thank you for your time. I'll end there.